So, welcome everyone to our talk about commercial real estate. So, this conversation actually started maybe about in January. We all went to the Linfinity event, and during lunchtime, while we were eating sandwiches, which were delicious, in a parking lot. I feel like I learned so much more about real estate, and it was really just through casual conversations with our friends. And so that talk was way too short, so I wanted to kind of, give them a bit more time to elaborate because my dear friend Rich, I think he prepared like what 80 slides, and he only had what 15 minutes to go through that day. So I wanted to give him, full attention, full hour to share his wisdom. These are some of my friends in the Bay Area that they're not only real estate agents, but Lana has also done other businesses like insurance, and they also invest with friends with commercial real estate and their parents to four kids. And so this is a lot of them, a lot of things for them to juggle. And might makes me curious to know, is it because you switched to working with commercial real estate and triple net tenants so that you don't have to deal with tenants so that you can actually spend time on what counts? So without further ado, here are my friends, Richard and Lana.
Hi guys. Okay, let's answer your question, which is how do we handle four kids? And the answer is actually when we switched over from multifamily, we were doing property management for 10 years. So we were babysitting tenants. We had all kinds of weird stories, right, Lana? The tenant didn't want to tow the neighbor's car, but the neighbor's car blocked this guy calling. Roommate call, like my roommate's trying to poison me, trying to poison the ice, call me, guidance counselor. Just like, this is too much, like you're not just a property manager, but you're also a counselor. So for us, we also had a brokerage and we were managing 40 agents, 40 real estate agents that would call us, and you give them high splits, but they still call you about, oh, this other agent stole my deal, blah blah blah, and then what can I do? So our turning point was when we said, you know what, let's just spend time internally with our family. We're trying to grow our family. Um, we're approaching, we were like, in our 30s already, so we wanted to start having kids. So rent control actually passed in San Jose and California, and we decided to 1031 exchange into commercial. So the answer to your question is yes, trading to commercial was the greatest thing we've ever done, and it allows us to spend time with our family. Anything you want to add, Lana?
Um, how we got into commercial was just like Annie was saying, we had lunch with one of our friend who owns a commercial strip building. And during what is it, 2008 crash, he was able to sustain and still, make money or, get income because he still had those rental properties, which is nice because he didn't have any tenant lates or anything like that, or dealt with any of the tenancies, residential tenants that we had. So, like you mentioned, we just had a conversation with him, and that's how we learned about commercial real estate. So, you guys are doing the first thing, right? It's learning about it. That's how we got into it.
Yeah, so believe it or not, our background when we got into multifamily actually started with a computer game called Warcraft. Not World of Warcraft, but Warcraft. So,
You guys might be too young.
yep. So a long time ago, we got introduced to a friend circle, and we play Warcraft 3, and when we lose, we do push-ups. So it was pretty crazy. And then during the load times, because load times were so long back then, we would talk about real estate. And so, oh, what do you guys invest in? Oh, we buy multifamily. We buy 1 to 4 units. So that's how we got started. We actually partnered with a guy that worked at Google, and we put down 50 grand. He put down 50 grand, and we bought a apartment building for like 400,000. I don't know if you remember, but after the crash, everything was on sale. So we got 4 units for 400,000, and then we got our second one for 450,000 or something. That was brought to us by an agent in the office. And so that started our journey because eventually all these properties became 1031 exchanges into commercial. And so the portfolio is pretty big now. What year was Solana? This was like 2000.
short sale time, so probably 2010.
10, yeah, 10. So long time ago. The key thing is that good partnerships, like the kind that you meet here in this group, are very critical because if you have the right mindset and you want to build together, then you leverage each other. Back then, we couldn't qualify for a loan. He was a W-2, he worked at Google, and we had the funds, he had the qualification, and then boom, boom, boom. And then as we grew our portfolio, it became easier and easier to qualify. So that's how we started our journey with the video game, with the game called Warcraft.
So then my next question actually is more of a let's go over definitions because the phrase commercial real estate is actually really broad and really vague. Can you guys give us the definition of that? What kind of examples fall within it, and what specifically do you guys do?
Okay.
So commercial can be more than 4 units, right? So if you're talking about residential, it's more than 4 units. That's how commercial loans work. We do commercial retail. So there's retail, there's businesses, there's, medical offices and stuff like that, right? So we focus mostly on fast food, standalone buildings, because that's what our buy box is, because it's affordable for most people. Raising, 3 to 5 millions is easier than raising 40 million, right? And then a lot of these plazas, they're anchored by a bigger, retailer, a box retail like Walmart, Target, Home Depot. So then it's pretty safe to say that they will stay there for a while. So that's what we look at. We don't really invest in banks, even though one of our first property was a bank. But yeah, mostly fast food because we believe middle America is always going to eat fast food. It's convenient, it's easy. I feel like it won't go away, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in fact, during COVID, these fast food places, their sales were up 20%. So because it's kind of COVID resistant, you get that joke. Um, we like it. And not only that, but we also get to see the tenant sales. So if they try to negotiate against us, we look at their sales data and we say, no, you guys are doing $2 million in sales. Our rent is only $70,000. You can easily afford this. So
Mhm.
we get to
Except
cheat
for
on the
corporate
negotiation.
ones, you can't see their P&L, like
Mhm.
Starbucks.
Right. So for those that are just kind of getting a recap, is that commercial really does fall into many different categories, including the large apartment complexes that you see, anything from 5 units and plus, that doesn't qualify for like a regular loan that you guys see with them, like the 25 down, those type of things for 30 years. There's also like retail strip malls, there's offices, there's industrial. So that's just a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Some of our friends. I see Vincent in here. He's one of my homies, and that's over in the Oakland side. That they also have plazas as well. Hi, Vincent. Hi,
You
buddy.
going?
Hi. He wants to make sure I'm not saying shit and saying all great things about him. And if anyone's in Alameda, go to Alameda Brewing Company because that's where he's located, and that's where a lot of our Alameda meetups are.
Thank
But
you, but please let's go back to the stars of the show. Thank you.
he wants to be just hard too. So, but Grish, if you did you want to pull up the slides that you had from before?
You know what? Let's keep it simple, Annie. I'll show
Okay.
you the slides of our visit. Let's make it less boring because I can't get through 80 slides in 10 minutes.
You were really close to it before,
I
but
was.
if you can go through those and then also explain to people what does a triple net mean when
Sure.
you're on.
Can you
Thank
see
you.
my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is our RV trips. So we always I say let's see. First one was 2021 during COVID, the best time to travel. And then our last one was just last week. So this is what a commercial retail building looks like. These are the ones that we buy. These are the standalone retail. My kids don't know that they own it, um, except Lana kind of let one slip on the recent trip. But it's kind of cool because hopefully in the future they'll be like, "Oh, this looks familiar." So we visited these properties. This Burger King here was really ugly when we bought it. It was a building like from the 90s. The tenant paid for the remodel, $300,000. They already had a 10-year lease. So I said to them, well, why don't you guys, since you spent so much money on my building, thank you very much. why don't you guys sign me a 20-year lease? And they said, okay, we'll do it, but you give us 3 months free. And so I'm like, okay. So we just that one move of the tenant upgrading, which they're required to by the franchisee, just that one move has increased the value of this building by almost 300,000 to probably 1.8 million. So we visited there. They've got all the screens there, you know, the fancy things when you order. So it's a very modern looking building. And we also visited this deal was bought during COVID. That's Lana's niece, and we set up a little legacy trust for her side of the family. This is called an advanced center for Make America. You slide your ATM and you get access to it. You FaceTime a teller. So I thought, you know, like that's pretty cool because no interaction, no risk of getting COVID. There's one in Fremont. So it's nice. They actually wanted to redo the building recently. So they asked us for permission and we said, okay, sure, you know, spend money on
So
our building.
yeah, so basically a triple net, which is like, and you'll see it like N, just means that the tenant is responsible for the taxes, insurance, and the rent, basically. So you don't have to do anything hands off. When they need to fix something, they do have to ask your permission because you are the property owner. um, when you get a tax bill, you just send it to them and they pay for it. They do everything. So you're hands off. So personally, I don't have to do anything with the Burger King. This Bank of America, however, is a double net. So that just means that they're responsible for the building and the rent, the insurance, but I'm responsible for the parking lot and roof. So depending on the lease, right? But then at the end of the day, I bill them back. I don't know why they do it this way, but at the end of the year, I bill them for my property management fee. I bill them for the property taxes. I bill them for the landscape. And then whatever the lease might be, if it's, this one is particular because they have a cap of how much you can spend on the landscaping, property management, et cetera, right? So that's what a double net means. We don't buy a lot of double nets, but if it's a good deal like this one is, we do it. And the nice thing about these commercial property is they pay for my management fee. So that means every month I personally like get paid just to do the bookkeeping, managing the property, even though like Burger King, there is no managing, but they will pay me, you know what I mean? So
And
that's
sometimes, guys,
additional.
it's as
Mhm.
much as 15%. So imagine that you're doing the landscaping and you get to charge something on top of that. But as Lana said, you have to make sure that you bill them, otherwise the cap will kick into place and then they won't pay you the full amounts.
Mhm.
So, but if you need to use a system called Door Loop, right, Lana? Door
Yeah, I
Loop.
use door loop.
Mhm. So this is the Popeyes. This Popeye is in Dayton, Ohio, and this Popeyes actually was like 2.6 million. It was the most expensive deal we ever bought. We never ever thought we could do this, but you know, somehow we did the Bird method actually. We pulled cash out from a commercial property as rates were going down, and then we bought this. And I think let's see here, they're doing about $2.5 million in sales, and our rent is like, it goes up every year by 1.5%. It's like 150,000 or something. I don't know, whatever. I think we get like 15,000 gross per month on this one. So pretty crazy. Our next move might be to install Tesla chargers around the bigger properties that we have. I just went to a fast food place, and Electrify America is also a nice competitor too. So that's my kid eating at the restaurant. Super nice. Um, let's see. So those are the triple nets, as Lana said. I flew a drone on here. And the reason I did was I was just curious. They got 4 ACs running there. And now I get to tell the tenant, hey, you need to fix the roof. Can you imagine that? The landlord, I get to tell the tenant, hey, you got to fix the roof because these roofs right here, all that AC is leaking onto the roof membrane. Obviously, I don't recommend anyone just fly your drone, but that was kind of I don't know. That was just kind of a random thing that we did when we visited the property.
Richard, if you don't mind me
So
asking,
because
why?
these are, uh,
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Why didn't you ask the at least the management on site if you could access the roof directly instead of flying a drone around?
We don't have a management on site. You're talking about the manager of Popeyes?
That's correct. Yeah, the GM or whatever of Popeyes themselves.
I don't think they would do it because we're supposed to manage the property ourselves. Like we're supposed to be the managers. They
Mhm.
just run the business, if
I
that
like
makes
to do random
sense.
things sometimes too.
Yeah.
So that was just a random. I don't do that for all the buildings, but we don't identify ourselves as the landlord either when we go eat there, right? We don't get free coffee from Starbucks, unfortunately, either.
Yeah,
Well,
So
that's
yes.
unfortunately that's not how it works. I wish it did, but
yeah.
So, just to answer your question though, a lot of times these are just employees, so they don't want them to climbing on ladders and going on roofs and stuff like that. And then when we work with corporates, they have like a management company, like they have a division themselves that does property manage, but they are not on site either. So for us, we send out somebody and then they would make a report. And then they will come back to us and then we build the, like Starbucks, for example, we build them and then have the other person fix it.
Yep. Now let's talk about this
I know it's
Hardee's.
a little roundabout, but it's very different. Yeah. Good.
Mhm. Let's talk about the Hardee's here. So this is this example kind of demonstrates the power of these leases, these landlord friendly commercial triple net leases. So this Hardee's is basically inside a plaza that became a Myers, Meijer, which is kind of like a Walmart, super center. So they're kind of like that out parcel building. As you exit, you see like a fast food, and you're like, "Oh, I'm done shopping. I want to go get fast food." So during the construction, this guy, well, I just realized he's got a 1 star on his building. This guy actually started to play games with us. He said, "Hey, my building is not getting sales because of construction. The city approved the construction." And so I said, "Well, are there not signs that say you can access the restaurant?" And the city said, "Of course there are signs. We're not closing down business. We want to help, the businesses." So we negotiated with the city. I don't know if I could look at the map overview of this one, but we negotiated with the city to kind of they were taking 10 of our parking spots, and so we got actually some free parking spots on the next side. So when they were building around this Hardee's, this guy was complaining, and he shouldn't complain because this all everything is going to be for his benefit. Number one is when that center goes in, he's going to get a lot more sales. Our rent doesn't go up, right? Our rent is already fixed. So, as a result of him always being late with the checks, he's the only tenant that we had that was not paying direct deposit in ACH. So, we sent him a notice of termination. And the notice of termination says your lease is over. He's got his franchise agreement with Hardee's. He can't have that because he's going to be in default of his franchise. So he quickly is willing to sign whatever. So number one, our terms were um, our quiet terms was stop complaining, right? Number two was direct deposit the rent, put ACH in. I don't know how to do that. Well, you got to learn because if you're gonna run, he's got like 30 stores. You can't be cutting checks manually every day. But it's not my job as a landlord to watch his business. And number three is if you're ever late, then your rent will automatically go up by 10%. Period. Because the construction is already done. So if once the construction's done, if you're ever late, the rent goes up by 10%. So guess what? He was late last month. So now we get to charge him that 10% rent increase automatically.
Is it like a one-time increase or is it like a permanent?
It's a
Like
permanent increase with the new rent schedule.
oh wow.
Mhm. So so what I learned is that that could be very aggressive, that type of posturing. But when we've sold a lot of like we sold some commercial buildings, to folks that are not quite experienced, then sometimes the tenant will walk all over them. Like for example, they'll try to renegotiate the rent, and they'll come back to me years later and say, "Hey, I had to drop the rent on this one." And I'm like, "But did you ask for their sales? No, we didn't. Did you ask if they got any COVID money? No, we didn't." So a lot of this comes from experience, right? When you're dealing with residential tenants and they're playing games with you, then a lot of this can translate over to commercial as well too. not only that, but all the attorney bills I get to bill automatically to the tenant. So it's pretty cool. This guy, he's not even in Indiana where this is. He's actually in Georgia running these sites remotely.
Talking about passivity.
Okay, so that's the story about the Hardys. And then we went over the Popeyes already. So any questions so far?
Oh, I have one about going back onto the roofing part. So how
Mhm.
come you asked them to fix it? Because like I know it's triple net, but isn't it like you should be at least be responsible for like structural things? Because that's kind of outside.
Nope. So many commercial agents will advertise something as triple net, but when you look at it, it's not really triple net. It's really a modified double net. So, for example, Starbucks requires structure and roof. Starbucks is really double net. Starbucks does have some reimbursements for certain things. For example, let's say if I have to repair the HVAC, I get to bill them. If I have to replace it, I have to pay for it. So there's a lot of little fine prints that are involved. But with these guys, with these absolute triple nets, the complete building is the responsibility of the tenant. There's no there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Maybe the asphalt. Maybe the asphalt might be my responsibility, but rarely, we never get a call on the asphalt. The only weird thing that happened with this particular KFC in Oklahoma was, I guess a gas company says, "Hey, I'm gonna run a line through your property. It's next to Route 66, some type of infrastructure improvement," and then they paid us like 5 grand. So we got the tenant's permission. I said, "Don't get too close to the building. We don't want to affect the tenant's business."
We
And so
actually negotiated that too. They were gonna give us 2,500. We're like, no, give us more.
yeah, so it's
So
pretty.
yeah.
But other than that, the building is completely the tenant's responsibility. This building may not even look like it right now. I don't know. It's been 4 years, so they could have redesigned it to the more modern. This is called the Showman model of the KFC. So what else? The other thing that I'll share about this particular deal is that this guy, when we bought him, he was a 30 store operator. So his lease guarantee is among 30 stores. He can't say, "I want to bankrupt and get rid of this lease on Oklahoma." He can't do that. He's got 30 store guarantee. So a lot of times you have to kind of watch out and understand what's inside his LLC because you don't want a weak guarantee. Fortunately for us, because we finance these deals, because we always try to leverage as much as we can, the bank will usually ask those questions if we miss it. Now, what happened recently, about 2 years ago, is that he got acquired by a bigger operator. The operator is out of Las Vegas. The operator has 100 stores. So he is like, "Okay, can you assign the lease?" We're like the last ones to hold out. I don't know, just you're the last store. We need to assign the lease. I'm selling my business, so he is selling his business. The operator from Vegas is a lot bigger business, bigger guarantee. I don't remember negotiating, but he was just like they were trying to give us a weaker LLC, and I said your guarantee should be at least the minimum of the 30 stores because I don't want to have a weaker LLC in case I sell it. So in the end, I think we got 100 store guarantee on this deal, and that makes this deal more valuable because now a buyer that buys it from me, it's almost like a corporate guarantee. It's 100 store.
Did that
You
make
can't.
sense? So
Actually,
basically
explain the guarantee.
yeah, so
Like,
basically the person that bought the guy's business said, okay, we're gonna assign this LLC that has like 10 stores in there. We're like, no way, we're not gonna sign with this LLC that only has 10 store guarantor, right? Guarantees. So we actually said no, we're gonna sign it. So his deal could not go through. So they finally cave in and gave us the LLC that was guaranteeing 100 stores. Does that make sense? So we signed with that contract with that LLC instead.
well,
Because
actually,
a
I
lot of
wanted
times,
can you clarify what do you mean by the guarantor part? As in, like, are
so
if
let's say I own KFC, right?
yeah, yeah.
I just don't own one. The franchise, they probably own like 30, 50, right?
Hmm.
But then I, as a business owner, can make multiple LLCs. And maybe this one only has 5, and then another one only has, my 40, right? just to restructure, right? To structure it a certain way, just in case, hey, I'm going to sign with these guys, 5 only. If I bankrupt with those 5s. If that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Got it. So it's more of a legitimate business and it has more leverage because there's more
Correct. So when
property.
you sign with these, when you buy these properties or when it gets assigned, you always have to make sure you look at the fine print. You have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that, what you're signing is, just know that you can negotiate, if that makes sense.
Then how do you know how many like buildings or the businesses are in there? Like is it shown or given and told to you? Or is
Yeah,
you have to
they give you
type
the
it?
LLC documents. Mhm.
Oh,
Mm.
Yeah.
okay.
And then
Gotcha.
we look it up too, we look it up on where they're from. We kind of do our own investigation a little bit. But yeah, they give everything to you and then you make the decision.
Got it.
So in the hierarchy sense of the strongest guarantee, I would say like the government buildings, right? Number two would be corporate Starbucks. We have some T-Mobiles. We have the Bank of America. So corporate means that it's it's not a separate Bank of America. It's not Bank of America Indiana LLC. It's Bank of America corporate. And then the third one is going to be the number of stores in a smaller operator. The most that I've seen is 200. I've seen some operators that have like 200 stores, and so that's a really solid guarantee. For us and our price point, we typically encounter 30 to 60, which is a good store. That means that they're running the business, they're running the KFCs, they know how to make money, they're focused on growing their business. And eventually, like this guy, when they decide to sell it, they're gonna sell it and someone's gonna buy it from them because it's making money. Alon, you want to talk about the negative while I deal with your baby?
So just like any business, right? You can have bad business owners. So let's say if you buy one and one goes dark, right? So the good thing about these triple net is you're guaranteed by the lease. So they will still pay even though it goes bankrupt. So we had a property, Church Chicken in Florida. Rich's mom owned it. And then the business itself was paying her every month. She didn't know anything about it until one day a realtor called her and say, "Hey, are you selling your building? It looks like it got burnt down." And she's like, "What? I've been getting paid every month," but she didn't even know that that happened, right? So we called the tenant, and it's a corporation too. And they're like, yeah, we had a fire and we're rebuilding it. But it took like 2 years, I think. And then finally they're just like, oh, you know what? We're not going to rebuild it anymore. So we actually were able to sell it, but they were still paying every month because the lease guarantees that, you know what I mean? So I guess in a way, it's like a good thing. It's a protection, but at the same time, but what happens if they don't? So there was another incident where we had a Pizza Hut in New York, and same thing happened, right? They decided, you know what, we're going out of business. We're not gonna. This is during COVID, I think. But they still paid us every month for the lease. In the end, we decided to sell the property and negotiated with them. Hey, you're gonna break your lease. Just pay us X amount, right, to break your lease. And then we sold the property to the neighbor actually. So there are some downside if, let's say, the business doesn't do well. The operator, it could be the corporation if they go bankrupt. That's another problem that you might foresee. They do still pay the debt. Let's say if there's a BK, right? They still have to pay uh, their obligations, right? So you do have time to find a replacement tenant. And usually that's why one reason why Rich and I we only do small standalone buildings because we can find replacement easily, especially when they have a drive-through, right? It's harder to place a larger space. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like you're still gonna get that rent coming in. So you can take your time to, I guess, find a replacement tenant. But that would be one of the downfall, I would say. But
But with that story, that Church's Chicken, we still sold it for a good price, which is really weird to me because it was closed, right? So the buyer is kind of gambling that they're going to open. And they texted me like a month later and says, hey, they decided to reopen. Because you never really know what corporate's going to do. So he's counting on getting the end of the leased rent, and then he could always, put another tenant in there. That's the nice thing about these buildings is if KFC goes out, I could put in a Starbucks or whatever. Most of these building sizes are between 1,500 to 2,500 square feet. So it's the perfect size for that. The DaVita here is, gosh, that's like 5,000, Lana? 5,000 square feet.
I don't
So
know,
that's
but it's also medical use, so it's more specific.
Yeah, so this is the one that we bought during COVID as well too. So this is this one has a cash on cash return of like 15%. We ended up taking over the seller's construction loan at 3.5%, which is pretty crazy. So we bought the seller's LLC and the bank says, "Hey, we want to do business with you guys." Why do they want to do business? Because they want our relationship. So um people in the Bay Area, have a lot of liquidity, so they wanted that relationship. They let us carry that loan. And they're very easygoing, they want to keep this property in their books. So when it comes time to renewal, sometimes they'll reach out to us and offer like a loan extension at no cost.
Also,
Um,
we were able to use the cost segregation that they had to depreciate the building. So that was nice. So this is a great way to get, if you're W-2 high income earners, you can do cost segregation with commercial as well.
And this is the recent trip. This is a deal that we bought in. Actually, this is how a lot of people find us on SARE, which is this KFC deal I posted a long time ago, and I was looking for partners. We ended up finding a lot of partners. This is a sale leaseback. So the tenant, so check it out. The tenant is the KFC, and I think they have like 80 to 100 stores. They're pretty big. They are also our lender. So we have negotiated rent back at 4.875 for 5 years. And they've also adjusted the rent to market because I don't know what happened, but yeah, we had an appraisal done. I can't remember why, but we had an appraisal done. Appraisal said, the tenant is paying higher than market rent, so we need to adjust that. So we actually got the rent down to market, and because cap rates are related to how much the rent is, we got $400,000 off of the list price, to like 1.6, 1.8, something like that. So this is in Memphis, Tennessee. The only thing wrong with it is that in the 1950s, there used to be dry cleaners. And we have those type of sites all over, everywhere. So all you do is you put a pressurized system in the ground. The system itself costs like 20 grand, but after all the government administration stuff that you have to go through, the Tennessee Department of Environmental something something, then it ends up being 60 grand. So we fundraise enough to complete that work, and the tenant is cooperative because they're also our lender, and then we're secure because we know that they're not going to default on their lease, because if they default on the lease, then we would have to default on the mortgage. So what am I really buying here? It's kind of like I'm just buying the paper, right? I'm just making the deal happen. But really, the tenant is running the store, and they're cooperating with all of our systems. So that process should be done, I think, in about a year or two, right, Lana, for the environmental stuff?
Yeah, we have 2 years left. There's some questions, Rich. So
Mhm.
cost segregation, what's the ratio of investment versus cost segregation first year loss?
What's the ratio of cost segregation? Is that what you said?
Yeah, versus the first year loss rate. Ratio of investment versus cost seg first year loss. I don't think there's a ratio per se. You do the cost segregation,
Mm-hmm.
and let's say this, I think this KFC is the one that we did recently, where we were able to write off, I think 400,000 that year, right? And then we just take it off of our K1s. I mean, our taxes, of course, depending on your CPA and all that stuff, right? Um, so for us, we partner with people, and whatever percentage you own, that's your cost segregation that you can depreciate on your own taxes. And then you just take that to your CPA and you decide if you're going to take that or not. If that makes sense?
Okay. So we fundraised to include the cost seg. To answer your question specifically, it looks like acquisition cost was 1.2 million, 2023, and I think we got a benefit first year of 172,000, I think, over over 2023. So it was significant. The best building that we actually did though was like a $700,000 cost seg. So they actually go to the site, they do all the inspections and stuff. We don't have any real like involvement in that process. We just get the cost seg, send it to the CPA, and then it says present value of tax impact was 60,000. Cumulative future value with the cost seg was 1.2 million. So hopefully that makes sense.
And there's a couple more questions, and let's go back to see a little bit about more real estate basics, because you actually mentioned several strategies that are not very often known to folks. This is Maggie's question: is that you purchased one of the properties, not like the traditional means. You actually purchased it, the LLC of it. Can you explain the strategy a little bit for those who don't understand?
Ooh, okay. Let's see. The best way to describe it is that we already had formed the LLC, Wyoming LLC, and we ended up buying the shares of the sellers LLC. So therefore, our LLC is inside the sellers LLC. It's a
It's not
path where
normal to do that though.
it's not normal, yeah. It's just I don't know. It's kind of like whenever there's I mean, it's such a good interest rate, right? So whatever we can do to get it. So the first thing when we look at deals is, hey, does the seller have good financing? Hey, can we buy the LLC? So many times the commercial agents will be like, I don't know what you're trying to do. They don't run the business. So it's not a strategy that we pursue on every deal. It just happened to be the bank that wanted to give us the loan at a good interest rate, was okay with that. Otherwise, we would have to pay points, origination fee, all that stuff. So it's not your typical strategy. Just like this KFC here, the seller carryback was just a random question that's, hey, instead of us, taking 60 days to close this deal, how about you guys carry back us a loan? So they offered us 5-year at 6% and we negotiate back and forth and we got like 4.875. So a lot of these aren't really strategies. They're just more like whatever we can do to get the deal to pencil better.
And then I'm assuming in that situation, since you just bought their LLC, was that you were able to keep the original property tax level so it doesn't trigger anything?
So we actually aren't as fussy about property tax compared to multifamily because the tenant is the one that's paying the property tax. So sometimes they'll ask us for permission to appeal it. So whenever there's a transfer, because nothing has happened in terms of their business, they'll go back and appeal it. We'll give them permission to appeal it. Whether they win or lose, we don't really care.
Yeah, you see that usually as a strategy for multifamily owners,
Mhm.
where they're trying to, because if I sold my entire property, then it triggers the sales, and then the property taxes go up a lot. So I have seen some of my friends, what they do is buy the LLC, but they couldn't do 100%. They have to do it under like 25 or 50%, some kind of legal thing. Otherwise, it will still trigger the taxes. But they slowly will kick out the owners a little bit at a time until they take it over completely.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. In fact, I think many of the tenants just do the dispute naturally
mhm.
because within the lease agreement, it says language like that the tenant has the right to appeal the property taxes. So they already know they're paying it. All we do really is we make them put their address on the property taxes so we don't even get the bill for them. So
Right.
it's pretty crazy.
And the second part of Maggie's question was that because this time you're not actually buying the property as a whole, like the traditional ways, and then usually because when you buy it, there's also these inspections, and then you have the lender who's kind of like the one really overseeing, like is your largest investor. So in this situation, what is the due diligence involved to ensure that there aren't any additional liabilities that you might not be aware of, or that there were issues with that LLC?
Okay, great question. So that brings me to the Starbucks here. So the Starbucks, we actually fundraised this deal like 3 months ago, San Antonio, Texas. So it's very hard to pencil a deal in California and Texas, but recently we've been able to acquire this one at like a 6.4 cap. This one we were competing against 3 other offers, so we didn't get financing on this one. We had to come in all cash. So to answer Maggie's question, we didn't have the bank looking over our shoulder to vet the deal and verify the deal. Um, in this particular case, the seller was an elderly lady, and she was kind of tired of managing it. During the process, we discovered she was 3 years behind on her CAM reconciliation, which we caught because the agents couldn't provide the CAM reconciliation, which is part of the lease. So I was trying to convince them to drop the price by like 50 grand. In the end, we got a seller hold back, so they're holding a portion of her money until she finishes it. We also discovered that she was not responding to the Starbucks repairs, and she's elderly. I think she was like in her 80s, so she was kind of just retired. So we understand that sometimes these good deals are because the seller, is tired of the day-to-day stuff. Again, it's a double net, not a triple net, essentially. So going in blind, we raised all cash and we were able to get this deal going. Uh, but to answer Maggie's question, we have like 20 lenders that want to lend on this. So the strategy here, which is deliberate, is we beat the other cash offers. There's like three or four, because the price kept going up on us. So we offered under list price by like 100,000, and then all of a sudden, hey, I got some more offers coming in. So we kept going up, and finally, we just came in all cash. We're doing the BRRRR methods, the rehab refinance method. So the idea was to take cash out of this property to buy more. And so far, it's going pretty well. We actually are getting like 5.95% 5-year fixed interest rate. They may require a new tenant estoppel because the last one said that the seller was late on the reconciliation. So that might be a process that we have to go through. But we don't have any doubt about the value here. We don't have any doubt about the tenant. It's a corporate Starbucks, so corporate guarantee. Um, so yeah, we basically have our pick of lenders that we could go with, and as the rates continue to drop, we plan to continue to buy more and more, just using the funds from this one. So does that answer your question, Maggie? Sometimes you go in blind, basically. You don't. The
Yeah.
deal.
So Rich, thanks for the answer. I think that partially answers the question. I think that I gather the idea was that it depending on the deals. So sometimes you had to trust your instinct. Take for example this one that you had to go in and there probably isn't as much of a due diligence that you do what you can. But in other cases, are there that if you're buying a company, an LLC, rather than just the property itself, have you had to go through a process before you actually sign a paper?
Oh yeah. So our strategy is a little bit different from, in any deal, be it flipping or commercial. Number one is we request the due diligence upfront. We don't want to waste their time, and they don't want us to waste their time. So many times we'll come in on a deal like this with a 21-day due diligence, which is supposed to be really good, but we're from the Bay Area here, and residential properties, they sell for like no contingencies, right? So a lot of times the commercial agent will be like, "What? You're coming in with a 21-day due diligence." I'm like, "Yeah, just give me the stuff. Give me the environmental report, from 2015." So we're doing a lot of the homework up front because we want to make sure that we're not wasting our time, because while we're buying this property, we're also simultaneously having lenders look at the deal. We're obviously need to look at the deal to build our partnerships to make sure that there's nothing, strange about the deal. Um, this particular deal, we had to make sure that we have 6 months of CAM expenses just in case the seller owes Starbucks some money. We didn't want that to be a big hassle. The other thing that we do too is that the attorneys that we engage to do the PSA, which are typically local attorneys, like this Texas attorney guy, um, they're also looking at the deal with us in terms of the lease paperwork. We're also using AI, ChatGPT, to look at the leases, because it can point out red flags. Like I can say, compare this Starbucks lease to another Starbucks lease. They're not all the same. Some Starbucks will pay Lana her admin fee, some won't, in which case then she's working for free, right? So we're using a lot of the tools that we have available to be able to scrub the data, For example, this guy, I guess, I don't know. Texas has a lot of issues with asphalt and concrete. So the first thing that we saw from the pictures, which you can't really see here, is that the asphalt was like worn out. And so at closing, this is really weird to me, but at closing, the seller provided an invoice for the asphalt repair, which no one knew about, as well as a roof repair. And so so it was really weird because the asphalt that she provided, the repair was like 30 grand and it's good for like 5 years. So it's really weird to me because this is stuff that we would have done anyway. So now we don't have to do it. So with the roofer, I think she paid, I forgot how much, but she paid for a repair that was like $2,000 or $5,000. And so we called the roofer up, and we said, number one, send us a better invoice. And how much is how much is your current warranty? And number two, can we pay an extension for that warranty? So this way there's nothing that's a surprise. So I guess it's kind of like you just roll with the punches. Like boom, a random invoices come, what is it? Analyze it. And so because we have a nice virtual assistant team, we can move pretty fast in terms of being able to roll with whatever punches come our way. This Starbucks, by the way, has an outside patio. I haven't seen that in California, so I thought it was pretty cool because they adjusted the rent to reduce the size of the square footage without affecting the rent. So in other words, I think it's like free for Starbucks, which is good. And this Starbucks has actually been around since 2008, so they renewed it. So we're not buying a brand new one. We're actually buying one that's already been renewed. So yeah, it was really weird. Lana flew in here and just gotta mute Lana. So Lana flew in here and then she we had all our luggage and stuff, so so I met her in the Starbucks parking lot. Um and then my son was unhappy because they wouldn't give him water, even though he technically owned the building.
What little
Uh,
cheapskates. It's just water.
yeah, well, it was closing time.
Oh.
So beautiful Starbucks, beautiful location. Like we didn't know any of this because we don't visit our sites. So very nice, comfortable, almost like a what do you call that place? Almost like that Paris baguette.
Mm.
Um,
There's a
and then
question real
lastly,
quick here about your how do you guys loan on these for purchase?
how do we get a loan? We basically tried the local credit unions. So we have a virtual assistant team that helps us source the local credit unions. We also go through brokers, sometimes Marcus and Millchap.
I think most of the loans are interest and principal rate, Rich. Most of them. I don't think there's interest
Yeah, they're all,
only.
except for the KFC, actually. I think the KFC is interest only, but I could be wrong. Most of them are principal and interest, and then we negotiate so it's amortized over 30 years instead of 25 years. When we run our projections, we emulate 25 years just in case. 30 years is hard to get, so it's not on every deal you can get a 30-year amortization.
And then what's the down payment do they usually require?
It used to be 30. Now it's like 45, I think. Right, Rich?
It depends on actually the deal itself. So let's say you're getting something close to 7 cap, then obviously you can come in with less down. If we fundraise 50%, then we get no recourse. If we put down 35, 40%, then it's limited recourse. One thing that we do that's very important, regardless of what type of property you're buying, is make sure that the lender doesn't have an acceleration on death clause. Because when my dad passed away, man, it was hard with the bank to deal with that because they wanted to accelerate the loan. It was a good interest rate. Banks are always looking for an excuse to raise the interest rate on you. So we always negotiate that if a partner dies, then it doesn't accelerate the loan.
And then there's more questions about like additional is about the loan is that how much do you guys usually have to raise or set aside in order to feel like, okay, I'm confident that I can get through this deal, or that that's the amount that I should be putting in and raising to get through for the deal.
We have a spreadsheet that we use for calculating closing costs, escrow, fees, appraisal, etc.
Mm.
So we raise for all that, and then we raise for about 3 months reserve. Because they're triple nets, you don't need to have too much reserves. But if it's like a double net, we would want at least 6 months reserve or 4 months reserve, because double net, you have to pay the taxes first before your tenant pays, right? So at the end of the year, you reconcile and they will pay you the difference of what your cost is. So you have to have some type of operating income,
Mhm.
which is
And
not
then-
much. I mean, it's just property tax and then your property managed fee.
So,
No,
so the
so-
actual planning stage of fundraising is actually pretty simple. So we calculate, let's say this, I forget how much this was, but let's just say 1.5 million, this Dunkin' Donuts, Baskin Robbins, which is in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We we calculate 30%, which is about 450. And we say, okay, how many partners do we want to have, Lana? Friends and family, whatever. So we said, okay, let's do slots of 80,000, So how much does 450 divided by 80, how many partners do we need to fund this deal? Okay, let's reach out to the people that, enjoy acquiring property with us. Let's reach out to them. We have some doctors. We have some folks that use their IRA to invest with us, which is pretty cool. Um, and so it just kind of becomes a matter of who likes Albuquerque, who likes the brand, and then boom, we form the partnership. Lana runs with the LLC, and then I work on the operating agreement with the attorneys, and that's it. Like it's all done within 60 days.
And then Maggie has a question is about like what's like the holding period for people buying retail triple net? Like, is it buy forever, or is it kind of like how residential folks like, all right, usually we sell within 5 to 7 years.
Great. So, so in the original days, we had
We
one
haven't,
partner, our Google guy.
we haven't, yeah. Oh, I was going to say, we haven't had to sell any of our properties yet. Most of Rich and I property are more legacy properties. With the ones with more partners, it just depends, right? So we always typically ask for 3 to 5 years, and we look at the lease at that time and say, hey, okay, is it a good time to sell right now? And will we make profit, right? If we don't, as a group, we can say, hey, let's all just keep it, or we can sell it. Because our loan is a good loan. It's not like apartments where you have to really sell, right? Because it's a bridge loan. Does that make sense? So every deal is a little bit different.
And do
It-
you
it kind
have
of-
these
yeah.
exit strategies in mind? Because like if you're considering it's going to be a legacy thing, then but like you don't want to be tied to a
So what
bunch of
we do,
people for life.
yeah, what we typically do is we always look at the deal, right? If the interest rate is low, we're going to refinance, cash out, take the money back, and then you do whatever you want to do. You have this property, right? Or maybe that year, you know what? It's renewing, the lease is going to have a big bump. Let's sell the property, make a couple 100,000, and then we part ways.
But you don't have
So
like
that would
a
be our
value
exit, but
out
it
thing?
depends on the lease.
I
A
mean,
what?
you don't have anything like to say like to buy you out, like because I'm still thinking like I'm imagining we're all good friends and we've been good
We
friends.
do.
How about it by 7 years? I don't want to be tied onto anyone anymore. Then then
We
what?
do. We have in our OA that, hey, our operating agreement that, hey, if you want to get out,
Mhm.
just sell your shares. We don't
Mhm.
have a problem
However,
with doing that.
However, Lana, you have to remember that sometimes the guarantor clause kicks in with the lender. So it's
Mhm.
not like syndication where everyone here is a general partner, basically. Sometimes the lender will say, hey, Annie, I want you to be a cosigner guarantor, and we'll push back, or maybe we won't. The IRAs, for example, they can't be guarantors, so we respect that. So we haven't had to exit, but we give everyone the voting right to exit in that particular case if they want to. The only potential exit of our deals we have might be the KFC in Memphis. If they don't renew their 4.875 loan, which is a 5-year loan, then we sell it, and maybe they don't want us to sell it, so maybe they'll renew. Um, so we don't really set up a deal to exit right away. We always try to get longest interest rate that we can with the lowest rate that we can. So therefore we're not forced to exit. So everything will be by choice of the partnership.
And then in terms of the valuation in your properties, how are you evaluating how like, hey, like someone put in like 300,000, now it's increased my property value by XYZ number. Like how are you determining something like this?
Um,
Because their
so
leases are
we
like so different.
everybody gets the benefit of the valuation. So some of our deals actually praise for like 100,000 more than what we were buying it for. Like one of the T-Mobiles that we're buying was like 90 grand. Everybody gets the benefit of that, regardless of how much they put in. So we don't think of money as you put more money in this, therefore you get more. We just think of it as this is how much we need to raise. Um, you know, if anything, let me save some slots for my friends and family because one partner is like, oh, I can fund the whole thing. So it's a different way of thinking of it. If the deal's really good, the money's easy. That's how to think of it.
Cool. Lucy has a question in here. How did you first start with, or how did you get started with your first triple net deal? Or would you recommend others to get started? And her second question is, what are your thoughts on medical versus fast food triple nets?
Okay. So our initial journey started with the multifamily with the Warcraft thing, right? And then rent control passing in California, 1031 exchange. So when we're looking at what we could trade apartment buildings into, this became an option. I had an agent that worked for Marcus and Millichap. He introduced us to the concept. He had a lot of um, elderly folks that were just like trading up into like Walmarts and like big money. And so here we are with our little apartments, 1031 exchanging. What could we buy? So our first price range was 1 million to 1.5. And that's that Oklahoma KFC that you saw there. It was like 1 million, rent was 70 grand, 10-year lease or something like that. That's how we started. We started by 1031 exchanging, and kind of recycling the money. But then later on, we got more confident in fundraising. Thanks to Sarah, actually. We got confident in fundraising as my partner became happy with his portfolio. We started to open it up and say, hey, who wants to partner with us? And so ultimately, we found it was not that bad because it's kind of, it looks good, it tastes good. Tenants are making money. I have no idea, but this Baskin Robbins store is probably making 1.5 to 2 million, especially with mobile orders. Um, so the tenant's making money. They're paying us a very, very small portion of rent. So if everything pencils out, then, why not?
I
If you're
think.
looking at getting started, I would just
Mhm.
recommend looking at partnerships with people that might be tired of dealing with tenants and toilets and all types of drama. But if not, like you can always feel free to message us separately because our goal this year is probably to acquire 3 more. And so we typically have small slots, like maybe 50 to 100,000 slots, and then this way you can kind of get a taste of it. But we also do everything too, so you don't have to stress out about like Starbucks. This is Starbucks on the recorded line. Our landscaping is really dying here, and then so we deal with all that, like all the back and forth as necessary. But yeah, look into your own internal circle, your friends, and then see if you want to buy something together. The biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they want to buy strip malls, which is a totally different vehicle. We've had a two-tenant store with Wells Fargo, and it's supposed to be a Starbucks, but it was always vacant. And just balancing the camera reconciliation is so challenging. I had to pay a accountant to do that. So that's cost right there. And if you're buying a strip center, you got to deal with the leasing agent, you got to deal with the property manager. We don't have to deal with all that stuff. This is self-managed. Tenant responsibility is outlined in the lease. Like Alana said in an example, that the store could be closed. They're still paying us. We would never know. So that's how we got started in our journey. But you're always welcome to message us on the side. And, we have like 3 videos on commercial investing that are like 5 minutes if you're interested.
5 minutes is way too short, dude. But
Give you
thinking
slides.
about when you're doing the purchases and because actually it's related to someone's question earlier about like people are talking about restaurants, cap rates are XYZ amounts plus or minus. But like hearing from what you're talking about how these leases are so different, like your double net and your triple net, like how does this cap rate play an effect into this when it just sounds like it can't really be followed with those rules? Because like if you have stronger tenants and then you have a triple net, it sounds like it should be worth more.
Yeah, philosophically, I was thinking about that too, right? So when we buy the stuff, we count for the cap rate for this year. But what if the rent goes up in one of our deals goes up in 2027? That's only 2 years, right? So I the best way to compare it is really to average what that total lease term is and incorporate that. But that's not how we do it. I've seen many agents cheat though. Sometimes they'll say, okay, the rent's coming up, rent increase next year. So we're going to use that rent and, work backwards and get the cap rate. So long story short, it is an interesting vehicle where there's no metrics for the tenant, how strong the guarantee is, the rent, how much it's going to go up and when it's going to go up. Like our Popeyes is 1.5% every year. The best way to describe it is in 5 years, when this Dunkin' Donuts rent goes up, I can exit and sell it because the rent has gone up. And assuming it's the same cap rate I bought it for or better, and interest rates are down, I might be able to sell it for more. So it's what I call cash flow investing versus speculative investing. The data is there, the rent is going to go up, and that's a good time to exit before the rent goes up. If you wait to the end where you got like 2 years left on the lease, then of course the value is going to be down because many buyers don't want to buy something that has very little term left.
Got it. So you're looking at the cap rates just kind of for a reference, but you're really not making your decision based on the cap rate or the market cap rate. You're really basing it on the numbers as you right now you're cash flowing that these numbers are working and based on the lease that the rent's going to be increased in like X amount of years.
Correct. Exactly.
Good. So it's a very different concept, I guess, for a lot of our friends in here who invest in multifamily. They're expected to like, oh, it's gonna go up and then sell it, whatever cap rates. So
Yeah.
I like having like, bringing these like comparisons for people. And the second part of Jason's question is that what is your thought about process in buying in different markets when cap rates seem to fall within specific ranges?
Okay, that's a great question. We're not targeting different markets per se. We're actually targeting the cap rates first so that we can cash flow the property, and then we're kind of looking at the market simultaneously. Is it a recognizable city? Indianapolis, Elkhart, Indiana, Dayton, Ohio, Memphis, Tennessee. So those are all recognizable cities. That's what we're buying. We're buying the top 5 cities, not small cities, but big cities that are recognizable, that have good population. At least maybe 30 to 50,000 people or more. So we're all over the place in a sense. We're not restricted. We're lucky to get Texas, recently, hoping to get Florida, income free state, form an LLC there, and then that's how we run the partnership.
Perfect. Great. So that's part of their buy box is looking at big cities where there's population and jobs growth that can sustain itself. And so don't go buying things because, hey, oh, look, the cap rate is really great,
You look
And then
at brands too, though.
Mhm.
That's a big factor for me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lana likes fried chicken.
And then another part of the question is like, when normal people buying real estate again, they do the BRRRR method to make the valuation go up. So when you're buying like like something like this for a commercial, what's your version of making it worth more?
Um, you know, it's that like the Burger King, for example, they remodeled 300,000. So by them doing that, it's worth more. So I would start the refinance I wouldn't start the refinance until they're finished, right? I had no idea what the new value is. It's not like residential. I don't have a crystal ball. So I'm gonna start the refinance process as a result of my loan being, I think we were like at 6% or something, and we ended up getting like 4.7. So if it happens to have gone up, hey lender, can you give me some cash out? How much you need? I don't know, whatever I can max out because it's cheap money, right? And then we go out and buy more. So it is the BRRRR method, truly. It's just that we are not really doing any of the rehab. So the tenant is.
But then you wouldn't have known that there were going to be such major issues that they're going to put $300,000 in there, though.
It's not that there's major issues, it's that they're required by corporate Burger King to maintain a certain image. So if I had to gamble, I would say probably that KFC is the one in Oklahoma. That might be the next one that gets upgraded. If that
So-
happens, they're gonna ask me permission to upgrade, and I'm gonna say, okay, you have it. You want to sign a lease extension? If they sign a lease extension, refinance, take cash out because all of a sudden it's worth more.
Yeah,
So
so I think when we buy these properties, we don't look at whether or not we can improve it like residential. It's more of you buy it as it is, and if you get these extras, it's great. You know what I mean? So we don't buy it on speculative investing, if that makes sense.
So that's what it's a lot more conservative.
It's yeah, I would say it's more conservative. And then if you get to cash out, great. If you have a better interest rate, even better, right? But we buy it at face value, if that makes sense.
Good. But would
Mhm.
saying even though we don't like try to speculate to go up, would you say like if when you renew the lease and it's a better lease,
Yes, correct. Yeah.
then
So
that would also evaluate it higher, right?
correct. So if you have a longer lease, what are the terms, interest rate, etc., that will increase the value because you buy at cap rate, right? So it's the same idea.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Okay, look everyone. Now he has his 50 something, no, 54 slides, and now the slides begin.
No, I just want to look up this guy.
He's
I want to
looking
look
up
up
stuff.
your question. This is what we were buying before we had kids. So we were very aggressive. This is a Jack in the Box that was a that was a 2.5 year remaining. So Maggie, this is what not to buy. I don't know if you guys can see that. 2.5 year remaining. We got it for like a 10 cap. So this is stuff that Jack and David buys. I don't know if you know them, but 2.5 years remaining. So it was very aggressive. And what we discovered was that this rent, which was like 200 grand. Where is that rent? 200 grand. The rent is basically fake rent. In other words, the Jack in the Box pays a whole bunch of rent so that they can get a presence in this area. So it's called seeding in the fast food industry. So we were buying stuff like this where there it is, 217,000. So I'm finishing the tax return on this one. Um, so my initial 150 ended up making like 600 grand, which is pretty crazy because of this rent for 2.5 years, 217,000. And but then the tenant comes back and says, hey, market rent is only 100,000, so I can't give you a renewal at 200,000, blah blah blah. So they wanted 75 to 80. I got them up to like 88,000 for 10 years. They wanted a 5 year renewal at 80,000. So that's what not to buy. This is early on before we had kids, we were buying like stuff just on speculation. And what we didn't realize is that Louisiana has this weird Louisiana French system of roads where it's very hard to make a U-turn. So this Jack in the Box is only capturing one side of sales, only 800,000 in sales. We didn't know all that stuff. We just saw cap rate, great, 2.5 years. Okay, let's do it. And so what ended up happening was we put it on the market. We got some offers, LOIs. Typically gas stations, want to come in there, and we said to Jack, well, if you don't, renew us, then we're just gonna sell it. So they gave us a 10-year fixed, $88,000 rent, and then so we just sold that one like last year. So that's how we do it. The leases are very landlord friendly, and they're supposed to provide us with a notice if they do want to leave. Sometimes it's as high as 9 months. Sometimes they have to tell you 9 months before the end of the lease term that they want to leave. But like Lana said, we haven't really encountered, too much heartache with these tenants.
And then in comparison to also those who are doing residential, what is the eviction process easier than, residential?
Why would you want to evict them?
Well, I mean, if they were non-payment or some issues.
Hmm.
I would
I mean,
say that would probably be a little bit more strategic, right? Because now you're dealing with lawyers sending their, letters and corporate and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
So
the
that,
only time we got close was with that Hardee's tenant. And
mm-hmm.
so I had a lawyer draft the notice of termination. I guess the equivalent would be a notice of default, right, for a tenant. But it's it's more severe because it requires them to clean up all their stuff too, right? Get rid of their signage and all that stuff. So then they become in default of their franchise agreement, and it becomes a big deal, and they probably have to pay out of pocket to settle out their Hardee's lease. So we don't really want to get rid of the tenants. We haven't really had any troublemaker tenants. So except Starbucks. I'm just kidding.
Got it. So it's just really about you're using double leverage on them, and it's actually more leverage than just the regular, hey, residential, I'm going to call an eviction thing is because aside from you guys screwing them over, their hands are also tied with corporate too.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Maggie was asked like to ask in another way, what is the process like when a tenant doesn't pay for months?
The tenant doesn't pay for months. We haven't. So with the leases, they're very strong. So the Hardee's tenant, if he's late for 2 months consecutively, that's a default. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I don't have to run to an attorney and say, "Hey, can you find a loophole in this lease?" I don't. It's an automatic default within the lease language. So right here, here's a sample. Should tenant default under the lease, then blah blah blah. All the rent payments shall become due. Can you imagine that? The entire term of the remaining lease becomes due, almost like an acceleration clause.
Mhm.
Starbucks, on the other hand, in the old leases, they were building in termination fees where we could get out of there in 5 years. We pay you, Rich, 170,000, and we get to walk away. And many banks didn't like that, so they would actually have the power to terminate because they're corporate. Nowadays, I haven't seen that in the new Starbucks leases. They don't do that.
So what you say, like a tip on really get for newbies who are getting into this is to one, find a really amazing attorney who can come up with all these like loopholes and things, and also double check with ChatGPT.
No, you wouldn't have to actually. You
Oh,
would
no?
work with a great realtor and that knows what they're doing. And we personally we find our own lawyers to deal with all this stuff.
Got
You know
it.
what I mean? You don't actually have to find a lawyer yourself because a California lawyer will cost a lot more.
Yeah,
I
because
would
I was
say
looking
that
at, like, these don't feel boilerplate. That's what I mean, as in like, you know, how when you have like the regular car forms in California, like shall automatically increase all rent due payments. Like it sounds so extreme and so
Yeah, these
weird.
leases are very specific, so you have to read each one of them, and we have our lawyers to review them and give us the, the points and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different, you know what I mean? So yeah, find a really good realtor, or you
I
can
feel like
partner
it's
with us.
very, very different because like, you know, these terms like especially if you're new, you wouldn't have known that, oh, it's actually okay
No.
to ask for these
Mm-hmm.
random things because to normal people or to residential, it sounds so
Yeah.
and it sounds like it could be illegal, you know,
Right,
especially
right,
Californians.
right, right.
Cool. Okay, one of the final questions we have is from Mike is, so what are advice you have when buying with friends? Because you're now mentioning that you have 5 or 6 people that you're tying in and
Mm-hmm.
they're different personalities, probably different goals. How do
Mm-hmm.
you approach this?
For me personally, we were very lucky to find a friend who aligns the same goals as we did. So we were able to, I guess, have a like a democratic vote in a way. Um, the difference is you have to remember, like, you interview them, what is their goals, what's their plan. But not only that, you have to remember when they get married, their spouses, what's going to happen. Um, so you have to outline your LLC very well at that point when you form it. I feel like at this point in my life where we're doing more deals, you have to have control if that's what you want to do. One person have to have control, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
one person has to be the execution person, because I'm the thinker, Lon's the executor, and it helps because otherwise, even in a democratic system, it's hard to get the votes to move forward sometimes. So, like in this particular example, I'll say, okay, if I don't hear back from anyone, I'll go ahead and work with the attorney to send the notice of default. And then, and someone might say, hey, someone might say, hey, are we get to pay for the attorney? And I'll say, no, look at the lease here. It has the attorney clause in there. So we'll take them through the process so that they understand what's going on. Because sometimes we move like super fast. But to answer the original question, you want to find good partners and you want to have skin in the game, because many times with failed partnerships, there is either a lack of expertise or there's no skin in the game. So let's say someone's a developer, they're part of the contractor puts no money in the deal, and then, boom, the project falls apart. So same thing with the friends. There's multiple, types of friends. So for example, let's say I was partnering with Annie. She's super responsive. She's like great executioner. I would partner with her on a short-term rental, because when you have a short-term rental, we get random stuff like rice cooker. I need a rice cooker. I'm doing a wedding. I need an iron. We'll Amazon Prime it overnight or whatever. So we get all types of random stuff here. But for the people that are like, my W-2 is important to me, I just want to invest, I want to know that it's somewhere solid and good for my kids, then no problem. You can be a passive investor in a commercial property. So you have to kind of categorize your friends based on responsiveness, based on if it's an active business, like some people will, oh, let's go and start a restaurant, or whatever. Um, that's a very active business, right? So there's different types of levels. I watch my friends take all their money out of their houses, start a crawfish place, and then ended up like not doing well. So, you know, that's a really, really active business. No one is going to quit their job to run the restaurant. So there's different categories. But you want to make sure, number one, that you keep your friendships separate, personal from business. And then number two is that you outline everything in terms of roles and responsibilities. So nobody feels they're doing too much work.
Wonderful. And in closing, what are your 2025 goals for real estate? Either whether it's in your business or doing more of these or continued development. What are you hoping to do this year?
I'm waiting for Lana.
I'm more bit ambitious, but probably just buy a couple more triple nets this year. Maybe 3 properties, and then possibly looking at another Airbnb.
Oh, you're still going for Airbnbs. Whoa.
We do Airbnbs, honestly, is just to vacation personally.
Mhm.
I feel that Airbnbs don't really make that much for the amount of work that you put in, but for us, it's a vacation home, so it's just a vehicle for us to use,
Mm,
if that makes sense. Yeah, because you got to own like a lot of Airbnbs to make money.
yeah, and you guys still have the one, is it down in Monterey?
Mhm.
Is that still
Yep.
there?
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Next time was there a meetup, right?
Yeah, there's 6 bedrooms.
Oh, so we can do a dynasty meetup and like stay
Yeah,
there for a couple of days and hang out
for
together.
sure.
Lovely.
GPs, do they have equal voting right? That's up to you. Your operating agreement, however you write it up, that's up to you. My operating agreement is manager manage. So I actually manage the LLC itself. I find that that's easier that way. But personally, I do ask my partner's opinion on what, to do or what they want to do. And I take that into consideration, if that makes sense.
And then I bet a lot of people in here, they want to connect with you or might be interested in investing with you guys. Do you want to drop your contacts or let us know how they should reach out to you?
Mm-hmm. Uh,
I'm on it.
okay.
Cool. But again, for folks that are in here, this is not a sales pitch. We do not endorse, any, syndications or whatever. So you guys still have to do your due diligence. This is really more for edutainment. So we're not really,
Mm-hmm.
one
Yep.
you guys.
I want to
Yeah.
I want to show you guys. I want to show you Annie the sign that I got for Lana. Look at this sign.
Slow down, dog.
I don't
Run
get it.
in front of cars.
Because he's such a great executioner. He's so fast. So I wanted to hear her goals. Because sometimes I do tell her to slow down.
Yeah.
So, but her goals are aligning with mine, which is basically the commercial. Take the cash out, buy 3 more. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I love this, and I like that it's really more on the conservative side. It's more passive. You don't have to worry about those toilets and those annoying tenants. So for those, it's just, when as you guys are thinking about what to invest in, just think about also yourself and how much attention that you can put into all of this. And if you guys are noobs, you don't know what you're doing, like partner with someone who knows what they're doing and follow along and learn what they're doing and read the leases so that you can build more confidence before you start your own. So that sounds like exactly what Rich and Lana did. You just have to put your first step forward, start working with others. Cool. All right. Any ending tips or strategies that you want the SEER members to take away with?
I think it's just start. Just start somewhere. I know it's very hard to, like, you don't know where to go, where to start. Just have a conversation and then just kind of do it with everything, Mhm.
All right. So thank you guys, everyone, so
Thank
much
you.
for their time. I did record this. I will be sharing this with all of you guys who signed up. And again, if you guys have any questions, you guys can contact Rich and Lana at richandlana@c21soldteam.com. Again, that's Rich and Lana at C21saltteam.com. So until next time, we'll see you guys soon. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Bye.
Thanks, friends.